I personally got into German, well, my mother's Swiss, so my entire mother's side is still in Switzerland. So I grew up speaking and hearing a lot of Swiss German. I decided after high school to spend a year abroad in Switzerland and Germany, and that's when I actually really developed my German language proficiency. And being abroad and just living within the culture really influenced me. I was only 18 at the time. And so I decided upon my return that this is something that I'd like to study. This is something I'd like to continue in because it was one of the things I was most passionate in. I initially wanted to study biology, and my dad sat me down and was like, "You're not so good at science. Maybe you should do something you're good at." So German is something I'm good at, and I really liked the language, the literature, and the culture. I was really nervous about it at first, and then it ended up being one of my favorite things about the master's program at the University of Oregon. And ever since then, I continued on with it, and I've really enjoyed interacting with students, kind of helping them develop a second language skill set and having them explore different cultures and different dialects in the German language. For starters, I was asked to stay, and I really enjoy working with the group of people I work with. It's a smaller department, but there's more of an intimate and group work atmosphere. So we all work together, we all get along really well, and we have a lot of fresh, innovative ideas. Not to say that U of O doesn't, but it's just really great to work in an atmosphere where we are working together to help advance German presence and German courses on the OSU campus. I really like teaching. I love teaching because I love interacting with students. Getting to know students from different backgrounds really keeps it exciting for me, getting to know new people. I'm really about the interaction, and it really makes the class dynamic change. When I think back on my teaching career, there are a lot of students that stick out, and they really just stay with you this whole time. Their motivation, their feedback, it just really kind of keeps me going in that regard. And it's really all about the motivation, behind their desire to learn German. And German, of course, is something I'm passionate about. So I'm really happy to impart what I know to other people. If I'm not doing something that interests me in the classroom, then I get really bored myself. And then if I get bored, I must assume my students are bored. And I don't want bored students, especially when it comes to something I think is awesome. Because German's awesome. And there's no, you gotta, and if by entertaining myself I'm doing something kind of quirky, I'm okay with that. If you leave the classroom thinking, she's a bit weird, that's even better. Now, for the third term, I'm teaching German 111. It's a lot of fun, kind of seeing all the new, fresh faces come in to experience the puzzle that is the German language. I'm also teaching the second year, so the intermediate level of German as well. And so it's really great working with those students as well who have developed, have the foundation of the 100 level, and see them kind of build on that and see where they end up at the 213 level. One day I would really like to create a course about the West German student revolutionary movement in the 1960s. Because that's what I wrote my master's thesis on, and it's really fascinating. And it doesn't just have to be about Germany, but there are revolutions all around the world, and so it could be, a cross-cultural class where we have, the Spanish revolutions or the Mexican revolutions and the American part of it and all that stuff. Because I think, a lot of times you see a lot of classes on Germany that are just about World War II. And while that is a big part of German history, the 60s were even bigger in meiner Meinung nach. in my opinion, just because it really showed how they wanted Germany as a whole to change. So, I would like to say that's my area of expertise, but I haven't been able to showcase that yet, and I hope to be able to someday. I got involved here, well actually my time here started last August, and I fortunately had the opportunity to come here from University of Oregon. Being here and helping build the program, you know, kind of revamp everything, kind of refresh everything, make it more applicable to, you know, what students are interested. That is a great opportunity. So I'm hoping they saw my desire to help change and influence and make innovative changes to the department. I hope they saw that in my interview. And so that's how I got started here. So my creative drive probably helped a little bit. A lot of students come in or decide to start taking German here because they have the German heritage or some sort of, you know, German-speaking background. So perhaps their grandparents or their mothers or fathers or great-grandparents or happen to be German native speakers or something like that. So it's really great to get those students in because they seem really motivated to learn, because they're like, okay, so this is a part of me, this is who or where my family came from, you know. So it's really great to see those students come in. There are also a lot of students that are just like, okay, Spanish is a drag and I want to try something else. Seeing students come into German is really great because it shows that people are still interested in the language, more so than perhaps the other languages offered on campus. Not trying to start anything between them, obviously. But, you know, perhaps in high school you only had Spanish offered or French offered, and now here at OSU, you know, you have the opportunity to finally take a different type of language. And like I said before, German is kind of a puzzle language, and it's really great to see students get involved with it and like start picking it apart and trying to place things together. But then because it's such a more difficult language than, say, Spanish or French and all that, you see a lot of frustration. And that's why I try to keep the classroom fresh, you know, play a lot of games pertaining to grammatical concepts so people don't get overwhelmed and frustrated. Like most recently we played plural bingo, or no, not bingo, go fish with plurals. And then we also have done some other games, like we always play bingo with numbers and stuff. So, you know, I'm very aware and very cautious when it comes to 100 level students. I'm just like, okay, don't get overwhelmed. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a really awesome experience for you, and let's just keep at it. The video projects are just kind of a really fun, creative way to showcase the skills that you've learned throughout the term. And this is something that I learned in grad school, and you know, we had our courses do that in grad school, and it just seemed like a good way to assess and evaluate the student speaking skills. And me being a really big advocate for being creative, it's really great to see some students step outside of their comfort zone and create something. Because I know a lot of times you get really, in other courses, you don't have the opportunity to do such projects. And I think it's just a good way to end the term, because, you know, when you're watching it, it's like a mini German film festival in your class. You have 2 days dedicated to this, and you can have a laugh. You can be like, oh, that was really cool. And, you know, you get to know your fellow classmates a little bit more, or your students for that matter. Well, I've had a lot of really good video projects over the last years, and last term, so winter term, I had a dating show, and that was really, really quite funny. It's, you know, like I said, it's It's pretty humorous to see students who are otherwise quiet and shy in the classroom really come to life in these video projects. So in this dating show, you know, I had this one student who was just usually sat in the back corner and never said anything, and he just kind of like blossomed. He was playing this really weird 1880s man who was on the dating show. I've had a couple rap videos. I've had, I've had mysteries. I've had a Judge Judy spin-off. That one was pretty exciting. You know, the mystery of, or the case of the missing socks, big deal, you know. And it's really kind of funny to see where, you know, you see the script at first and then you see it on the screen, and it's just really funny how they decide to take things, so. Going back to when I did the study abroad, after high school, I was in the northern part of Germany, Bremen, so it's very north, kind of closer to the North Sea. I went there and I studied at the Goethe Institute for 6 months doing intensive German training. I have been to Berlin, and Berlin is really quite a fascinating place. If anyone has the opportunity to go to Germany, Berlin is an absolute must-see. Specifically because of all the history and all the multiculturalism and all the art and just various different things that come out of that city. It's just awesome. It's so hard to describe. You could be there for 3 weeks and still not see the majority of the city. It's just something that you need to, you know, be there and experience and all that. And of course, you should go there because they're planning on tearing down the East Side Gallery, which I know there's a picture of. I spent 7 months in Stuttgart and, well, outside of Stuttgart in a small town called Ludwigsburg. And I spent the 7 months there teaching at the Pädagogische Hochschule, which is the pedagogical university there. I was teaching English to Germans and other individuals from different countries, and so that was a really neat experience. I also taught at a middle school teaching English, and I am really glad to be teaching university students. So I've had the opportunity to go back and forth from here to Germany quite a bit, and Germany differs in so many ways from the United States, and there are a lot of similarities nowadays too, I would say. What I really appreciate about the German culture is their forthrightness and their directness and their inability to beat around the bush. And I find that kind of take, you know, in daily life very refreshing. You don't see that a lot here. I mean, you do sometimes, it depends on where you are, but a lot of times you get people who will beat around the bush and not tell you what they actually want you to know and be like, oh, that was good, but I'm never going to tell you that was awful, right? You know, so you know, that's one of the ways. And you know, I see myself really relating to Germans and, you know, Swiss and whatnot because they're very sarcastic, and I kind of like that a lot. You see that in their film. You know, you get a lot of sarcastic humor or very like dry humor, and I appreciate that quite a bit. And that does differ from the United States, because I mean, if you look at our movies, you know, the comedy that we have sometimes is just very blatant and kind of crude, and then, you know, you watch a German film and you get this dry, really sarcastic humor, and I really like that too. So, I mean, if I think about my family in Switzerland in comparison to like what I see other families here in the United States being, like, it's so different because, you know, I observe, when I was younger, I used to observe other families, and there's like this showering of love and hugs and like, oh, I love you, oh, let's hug. But with my Swiss family, it was always like, you never said that. You don't say I love you, it's just no. And hugs are weird unless you're having a really, really bad day. And so that was one of the things that I initially had to get used to as a kid growing up in the United States, because one day I did ask my mom, how come you never say you love me? Do you not love me? And she's like, of course I love you, don't be silly. And then you just kind of it's an interesting difference. So I think we're more emotionally open here in the United States, whereas in Germany they're just a little bit more protective of how they actually interact and express their emotion.